I welcome you as the president of today's meeting, Mr. President. We are grateful for convening it on such an important topic as maritime security. We thank today's speakers for the information provided. Challenges and threats at sea are becoming more diverse. Some of them, including piracy and the link between crime and international terrorism, do fall within the competence of the Security Council. The proactive actions taken in accordance with its central role, including the adoption in December 2008 of Resolution 1851 on the establishment of the Contact Group on Piracy off the coast of Somalia, have generally curbed the phenomenon of rampant piracy in the 21st century. Measures have also been taken to strengthen the naval and law enforcement capabilities of a number of regional states, and dozens of pirates have been apprehended and prosecuted. The Russian Federation was actively involved in these efforts, provided its naval forces to escort civilian ships, and took part in the work of specialized regional formats. At the same time, acts of sea robbery in the Gulf of Guinea continue to cause serious concern. A number of such incidents were accompanied by the taking of Russian sailors hostage. In order to increase the combat capability and technical equipment of the Coast Guard forces of the countries of the region, we are increasing financial assistance from the funds of the annual voluntary contribution of the Russian Federation to the fund of the UN Office on Drugs and Crime. As for terrorism at sea, in its pure form, this is a rarity. Of the high-profile terrorist attacks of this kind in recent years, we can only mention the blowing up of the branches of the Russian Nord Stream 1 and 2 gas pipelines in the Baltic Sea in September 2022. This incident, which became possible, as we all understand, in the context of the rabid anti-Russia policy of the previous U.S. administration, led by Joe Biden, undoubtedly created serious risks to international peace and security. At the same time, any of our attempts to initiate an independent international investigation into this criminal act, or to take other measures through the Security Council, were invariably blocked by its members from among Western countries, which makes us once again think about the circumstances of the preparation and implementation of this act of terrorism. In support of their position, as we all recall, they referred to their full confidence in the national investigations of Germany, Denmark, and Sweden, expressing in advance boundless confidence that they would be effective and credible. As you know, the effective investigations of Denmark and Sweden ended with zero results. The German authorities continue to stall for time and consistently evade providing substantive information about the progress of the investigation to both the Security Council and the entire international community, which fuels various kinds of insinuations and absolutely implausible versions in the international media. However, no matter how contrived Berlin and those who artificially hold back the publication of the German investigation try, the truth will still come out, and all those responsible will be found and punished. Mr. President, turning to the issues of maritime crime, we would like to emphasize that they do not fall within the competence of the Security Council. They should be dealt with by other specialized international organizations. In particular, the development of common approaches to the fight against organized crime as a whole, including its maritime component, falls within the competence of the General Assembly and subsidiary bodies of ECOSOC, primarily the Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice. To date, an impressive database of decisions of these bodies has been developed on various aspects of combating transnational crime. In addition, a whole system of specialized organizations, including Interpol, whose Secretary General is present in our room today, has been formed and is successfully functioning, designed to increase the effectiveness of international cooperation in responding to such threats. It is difficult to overestimate the importance of bilateral cooperation in the format of mutual legal assistance in criminal matters. Without it, it is impossible to seriously fight transnational crime. It is extremely important that this mechanism functions on a clear and predictable basis, without politicization and double standards. As you know, there are serious problems with this today. Requests from the Russian competent authorities are not complied with in most Western countries, even in cases where this is expressly provided for by the provisions of the relevant international treaties or Security Council resolutions. This is done exclusively for political reasons. As a result, transnational criminals who enjoy complete impunity win. The note for today's meeting mentions the factor of climate change. We would like to emphasize that their monitoring, development of response and adaptation measures also do not fall within the competence of the Security Council. For this purpose, specialized mechanisms have been created and are functioning on the basis of relevant international legal instruments, primarily the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change of 1992. We consider attempts to use environmental issues as a pretext for strengthening security measures unacceptable. In general, we have to admit that the topic of climate change is increasingly becoming hostage to various kinds of political speculations and speculative constructions that are not supported by either theory or practice. In contrast, the damage to maritime trade, freedom of navigation, and the resilience of global supply chains from unilateral coercive measures, OPMs, of Western countries is absolutely real. This tool is used by them in violation of international law to maintain their own dominance and implement unfair competition by non-economic means. The stability and predictability of maritime logistics is important for all countries, and for small island states or coastal developing countries in general, it is a matter of survival. Unfortunately, we are increasingly witnessing actions aimed at creating artificial obstacles and threats in this regard. Peacekeeping operations are a priori illegal. Their use is contrary to international law. This fact does not prevent states using peacekeeping operations from referring to attempts to circumvent such, I repeat, absolutely illegal measures in order to label ships as belonging to the so-called shadow fleet. I want to emphasize that this term has no legal character. There is no transparent international mechanism behind it. In other words, this is nothing more than arbitrariness on the part of Western countries, behind which there is a desire to maintain their dominance in the world by any means. In practice, such actions only lead to the complication of logistics and an increase in the cost of goods for the end consumer. In the end, developing countries suffer the most from all this. Mr. President, considering the problems of maritime security, we cannot fail to mention the actions of individual states aimed at escalating tensions in regions that are often located thousands of nautical miles from their own borders. They are presented as naval operations in support of freedom of navigation, although in practice we are talking about outright provocations. Of particular danger are the increasing cases of encroachment by Western countries on fundamental maritime freedoms, including freedom of navigation, the right of innocent and transit passage. At the Greek presidency of the Security Council in May, we described the outrageous actions of Estonian patrol ships that tried to seize a tanker in international waters by force. Then there were 2 attempts to land capture groups from a helicopter, and a boat of the Estonian Navy literally tried to ram the tanker. All this is under the same pretext that I mentioned today, and which has no international legal basis for fighting the so-called shadow fleet. As you know, the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea contains an exhaustive list of situations in which it is allowed to stop a ship under a false flag for inspection. Neither in this list, nor in the convention as a whole, there is not a single mention of the so-called shadow fleet. The inviolability of maritime freedoms, as well as the principle of the exclusive jurisdiction of the flag state over a ship in international waters, is key to ensuring the stable and predictable functioning of the international maritime trade system. In this regard, the actions of Estonia and its European support group have set a dangerous precedent. If other states follow suit, global supply chains will be interrupted and maritime trade will come to a halt. The use of NATO naval assets for such illegal actions is a direct path to military escalation and the creation of new risks to maritime security. Mr. President, in conclusion, I would like to touch upon the initiative to create an international maritime security body mentioned in the note to today's event. In our view, the relevant efforts made at the national level, as well as through existing regional and universal organizations, are quite effective and sufficient. We call on everyone to focus on improving them where necessary and not to complicate the context for their implementation, including through the illegal steps I mentioned. Thank you for your attention.